Hi, welcome to the TorchCast. I'm Dwayne Lester. Since I've started doing this show, I haven't had as many requests for an interview as I have for today's guest. Sam Andrews is with the Oathkeepers, and he was on the ground in Ferguson when the rioting was going on. So, Sam, thanks for being here.
Dwayne, thanks for having me.
I don't want to ask a lot of questions. I don't want to interject a lot today. What I really want is for you to just tell us your story about how you got involved in Ferguson and what you saw when you were on the ground there.
Yes, I got involved in Ferguson because my wife woke up the day after the grand jury announcement and said, "You need to come see this video." And it was Natalie, the gal that owned Natalie's Cakes and More in Ferguson, and her business had been severely damaged. And she said to the CNN reporter in the interview, "I can't feed my kids at night if I don't open my doors during the day." And so I said, "Wow, this is really troubling." And she said, "You need to go help this woman. You need to put together a team and go protect her. You know how to do that and make that happen for her." And I said, "Okay, see you in a couple weeks." And that's how we got started in Ferguson.
So when you first arrived down there, what was the reception like? I mean, were people welcoming you? Were you wanted there? Or was there initially kind of some skepticism?
Well, before we drove up there, we made some phone calls to some of the business owners in that same building block, found out who the owner was. We talked to Natalie and she said, "Yes, we need help." Everyone said, "We need help, please come up." But when we got there, it was a very emotionally charged moment. There were a lot of tears and a lot of hugs, and they couldn't believe that we were there to help them for free. And they were very grateful and very emotional.
That's that's fantastic. I mean, the idea that you're going up there for free and they can't I don't know, were they just out basically on their own? Were you like their lifeline?
Well, unfortunately, Nixon and Rep Plogel and Belmer had 2.5 months to prepare to protect this community. And of course, they publicly announced that they would. And then Monday night came, and the ill-conceived decision to release the grand jury decision at 8 o'clock in the evening, combined with the fact that Nixon did not place any National Guard in Ferguson to protect the people or their property, it turned into a disaster Monday night.
So from your perspective, you got there Tuesday, is that right?
Yes, we got there Tuesday about noon. We brought several trucks full of plywood and screws, and our first order of business was to secure the buildings, to put them in a defendable position because we knew there would be more violence on Tuesday evening.
So what did you see Tuesday evening then? What was it that as you got everything done and you were ready as night falls Tuesday evening, what are you seeing not only from the protesters but from the people who were supposedly there to protect the citizens of Dellwood and Ferguson?
Well, when you look at facts and video and pictures, you'll see what we saw. You'll see that there was no National Guard there. You'll see a lot of peaceful protesters, and you'll see about 10% of that crowd were the criminal element that were involved in the arsons and the lootings and the break-ins and the vandalism and all the other nefarious things that happened on Tuesday night.
And how did you guys deal with that?
Well, unlike Belmer and Nixon and Replogle, we decided not to use helicopters, armored vehicles, and tear gas. We chose a $2 bucket from Ace Hardware and a $10 fire extinguisher and some brave men who were willing to stand on the roof next to that fire extinguisher and that water and wait until they threw an incendiary device on the roof of our buildings, and then we pick it up and throw it in the bucket of water. Or if it was a Molotov cocktail, we walked up to it with a fire extinguisher and put it out and then poured a little of the water from the bucket on the roof to cool it off. It was a fairly simple solution that didn't have to cost $15 million.
So your crew actually came under essentially assault from people tossing these Molotov cocktails and other incendiary devices.
Absolutely. The block of buildings that we were guarding were attacked on numerous occasions, and there were multiple threats of, "We'll be back, we're going to shoot your guys, the new Black Panther Party is going to take you out, we're going to burn your buildings down." we'll be back, don't worry. And we would smile and say, thank you, have a nice night. We'll see you tomorrow night.
Now, one of the things that I tried to focus on the Torch was the fact that a lot of these guys who were causing the problems were from out of town. A lot of these guys were just leftist radicals who were here with their own personal agenda. They're not here for justice for Ferguson or Delwood or Mike Brown or anything. They were here to actually cause trouble. Is that what you saw too?
In part, that's what we saw. We saw people from out of town. We watched out of town license plate cars pull up and park in the parking lot and then walk the 100 yards down to the police station to protest. We did see some troublemakers from out of town, but most of the trouble that we ran into were from the local police.
Oh, that's interesting. I wanted to get to that because what you saw were two different reactions. You had the reaction from the people who were glad that you were there to help them, but then you had the reaction from the city, the county, and the state, and maybe even the federal government. Tell me about that.
Well, each of those groups that you mentioned reacted to us differently, and other than Ferguson police, the reaction changed the longer we were there. So, for example, the protesters on the first night were calling us the effing police and the effing KKK and demanding that we leave. Once they found out who we were, the protesters changed their attitude and were, thank God you're here. We're so glad you're here. Please stay. We love you. Now, the Ferguson police were very supportive and professional of us the first night we were there. And they continued that support and that professionalism throughout the weeks. And of course, Tom Jackson came out and publicly supported us. Now, the interesting thing about the St. Louis County Police and the Highway Patrol and the feds is that initially their reaction was, hey, how are you guys doing? Are you well armed? And we're, yes, we are. They were good. Keep it that way, was their reaction. And that was Tuesday and Wednesday evening. By Thursday, the reaction changed dramatically because of a series of events Thursday evening.
What explain the series of events that happened Thursday evening?
Well, I was on a rooftop across from the main block of buildings we were guarding in an overwatch position. And one of my MARSOC Marines noticed a silver Suburban drive up to a house that was very close to the firehouse and the police station on a hill above them right across the street. And he noticed three men get out of the silver Suburban dressed in black, tight-fit cold gear made by Under Armour. And they were wearing black outfits and had black hats on. And they were carrying black tactical rifle bags and gear bags into the house. Then we watched these men go to the second floor and third floor of the home, turn the lights off in the rooms, pull tables up to the windows, and then set rifles with bipods on those tables and point those rifles at my men that were on the rooftops.
Well, they were suddenly pointing rifles at you. Any idea who this was?
Sure, we believe they were federal agents. And so I called 911. And at the same time we noticed those guys set up, we noticed some highway patrol snipers get on the rooftop of the firehouse and start to point their rifles at our men as well. So I got behind an air conditioning unit and we shined lights in their eyes to block their view. And I called 911 and I said, this is Sam Andrews. We're at this location at this address. I've got private security at these locations at these addresses on the rooftops. Our men are armed. They're friendly. Could you please ask the federal team that's set up in this house, and could you please ask the highway patrol on the firehouse to stop pointing their sniper rifles at my men? Please relay to Unified Command that we're all friendlies here. And the dispatcher was very professional, and he said, absolutely, I'll make that call right now. Well, 2 minutes later, St. Louis County police cars start rolling in the northern lot to the north of the building. And a sergeant jumps out and says, where are the snipers? What house are they in? And I told him, and he said, we don't have snipers in that building. And I said, yes, you do. And they're probably feds that didn't communicate with you. And of course, the men surrounding the sergeant were like, yeah, those SOBs never communicate with us. They're not team players, and we don't even want them here. So it was an interesting reaction. And then the sergeant said, well, the lieutenant's going to come up. He wants to look at what you're looking at. And so we threw him a ladder and he came up onto the roof. to look at what we were looking at. And once he saw the men in the building, he disappeared to the west end of the roof and hid behind a different AC unit and got on his cell phone. This was Lieutenant Lohr talking to Captain Tim Tanner on his cell phone. Well, about 30 minutes later, Lieutenant Lohr walks to the front of the building and says, "Hey guys, I've got a solution for all this. My wife actually knows the woman that lives in that house, and she owns a barbecue business. And what you guys actually saw were her three sons carrying in black barbecue pots from the restaurant. You didn't see men carrying in black tactical rifle bags." And at that point, my Marine stepped up into the lieutenant's face and he said, "Really, sir? 3 tours of duty in the sandbox, and you don't think I can tell the difference between a black barbecue pot and a tactical rifle bag? Really, sir?" And at that point, I saw the tensions rising between the two of them. So I put my hand in between the two and I pushed the Marine back and I said, "Calm down, Eric. Let me talk to the lieutenant for a moment." And I said to the lieutenant, it's foggy out. It's really cold. It's misting. It's raining. Those people were backlit when they walked on the porch. Maybe we didn't see what we thought we saw. And the lieutenant looked at me and said, "Yeah, I think you saw black barbecue pots, and everything's good here. Now come down off the roof. We got to ask you a few questions." And so while he was climbing down the ladder, I asked the lieutenant, I said, "Hey, Lieutenant, can you do me a favor?" And he said, "What?" And I said, "Would you call your wife and have her call her friend and tell her friend to tell her sons to not point their barbecue pots at us?" And of course, all the men below him on the ladder started laughing and high-fiving each other and saying, "F those guys. I'm glad these guys busted their position. They don't communicate with us." And apparently, a lot of St. Louis County officers didn't know where rifles were being deployed by the feds and weren't aware initially, but boy, they were all aware by the time I asked the lieutenant for a favor. They all knew what was going on because they all laughed instantly.
So help me understand why the feds were there pointing barbecue pots at you. I mean, why were they not focused on, say, the people who were causing the disruptions and throwing firebombs at you?
Well, that's a systemic problem in Missouri that we're going to try and fix legislatively here in a few weeks. And it starts with federal involvement and a federal agenda in a small community called Ferguson, where the feds don't have skin in the game, but the businessmen and women and people lost $50 million in property and treasure because they weren't properly guarded, because a federal agenda came in and changed the plan that they had to guard them properly and changed it to a plan that served the federal agenda instead of a plan that should have served the people of Ferguson. So part of it's systemic with federal involvement that shouldn't happen, and part of it's the attitude of the police officers.
I think we lost him there, so we'll go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and see if I can reconnect with him via Skype. Just hang on one second. Okay, we got him back. Sam Andrews rejoining us now. Strange coincidence. That's never happened with one of my interviews on Skype. So that's something new that we're dealing with. But you were telling us about the federal involvement there in a local issue in Ferguson.
Yes, we have a problem here when the feds get involved and they don't have skin in the game, then everyone here locally suffers enormously. And that's the story of Ferguson, is that our politicians, and I include in politician both Governor Nixon, Rep Logel, the head of the Highway Patrol, and Chief Belmer. And why do I call them politicians? Because what they did was they very spinelessly kowtowed to federal pressure and did what they knew would not protect the people in Ferguson. Everyone knew that ground zero was Ferguson, Missouri for the violence once the jury announcement was made. Yet they changed the plan just less than 2 weeks out to not protect the people of Ferguson and to keep the National Guard out of Ferguson the night of the grand jury announcement. And that is criminal negligence in my view.
Now, do you have anybody on the inside who's telling you that this plan was changed about 11 days out?
Absolutely, I do. And we know that the plan was to have National Guard there the second time around, and we know that that plan was changed. And we know that the Department of Justice, Valerie Jarrett and Eric Holder, drove the change in the plan, that it came right from the Obama administration. And I firmly believe that some good FOIA requests and some good subpoenas of emails and phone calls between Nixon and the feds, particularly Valerie Jarrett, Nixon and Eric Holder, and Nixon and Belmar, and some of the written communication will absolutely prove that to be correct.
So what do you want to see done now? What are you looking for as the next step?
Well, the next step is to finish the investigation and get to the truth. And then the most important step after that will be to pass legislation that prevents this from ever happening again. And there's 5 pieces of legislation that we're looking for particularly to come out of the Missouri House and Senate. And the first of which is to protect police officers that are right now at-will employees. So if you're given an unconstitutional or illegal order as a police officer and you don't follow that order, you can be terminated, lose your job, lose your house. No one will ever hire you again. You'll be blacklisted by all the other police departments. That's a real problem. You know, in the military, in the Uniform Code of Military Justice, we actually have laws that protect a soldier from having to prosecute an illegal order. So if you're given an illegal order in the military, you not only are supposed to say no, you are legally required to say no, and you will be prosecuted if you don't say no. And we need laws that protect our police officers in the very same way, so that if they're given an illegal order by a superior, that they have cover and protection when they say, no, that's illegal, I will not do that. Right now, those men don't have that protection. Second thing we need to do legislatively is protect the law enforcement chiefs and sheriffs. So here in St. Louis County, when Belmar was ordered to illegally harass and violate the rights of my private security guards, Belmar should have had the spine to say no. Why didn't he say no? Because he has no protection if he does say no. So we need a law that protects police chiefs and elected sheriffs, that if they're ordered by the governor to do something that they know is illegal, unconstitutional, or unsafe for the people in his jurisdiction, that he is legally protected by telling the governor, no, I refuse to do that. And the third piece of legislation we need is we need a Civilian Protection Act. And that piece of legislation would prevent any federal involvement in a civil unrest situation in Missouri unless the governor, the lieutenant governor, the attorney general, 2/3 of the House and 2/3 of the Senate all agree that we need federal assets and federal people in our meetings. It was a federal representative that came into the Unified Command meeting and changed the plan away from protecting the people of Ferguson to a plan that caused $50 million of damage and allowed 27 buildings to burn. And that can never happen again in Missouri. The citizens need to make sure that that never happens again. And the way you do that is A, have elected sheriffs and not board-appointed police chiefs that are spineless politicians, and B, write legislation that keeps them out unless everybody agrees that we need their assets. And frankly, if you can't get the 5 most important groups as our political leaders to agree, why would we want a Leviathan federal police force involved anyway? And I'll tell you why this is so scary for the American people. Another thing the American people and the Missouri residents are not aware of is, at Ferguson, in front of the firehouse and the police station, the feds brought in electronic warfare devices to bedazzle the cameras and cell phones of the people that were protesting. We had 3 cameras at 3 different locations, more than 40 yards apart, and 3 seconds before the police waded into the crowd to beat people and arrest people, all of our cameras shut off within the same half second. And that was done by an electronic warfare device. The government is using military-grade electronic warfare devices to violate the First Amendment rights of Missouri citizens. And they did it on multiple occasions in Ferguson. And I have an Air Force JTAC that was working in our group that not only knows what device was used, but recognized it when the cameras did what they did. And there needs to be some serious investigation about that. And we're going to get to the bottom of this.
Well, I appreciate the fact that you went down there and put yourselves in harm's way, and along with your men. And I do believe we will get to the bottom of what happened there in Ferguson. I appreciate you taking the time to speak with me today.
Dwayne, thanks for having me. And please encourage people to elect officials, and I know you do this, but elect officials that care about the Bill of Rights, not just the Second Amendment, but all the Bill of Rights. Because we need to get to a point in this country where we all play by the same set of rules, including our politicians and government officials. And right now they have this elitist attitude that places them above the law, and we need to rein them in and have everybody follow our laws. And I think it'll be a lot better place to live.
Well said. Well said. I agree. This has been the TorchCast. I'm Dwayne Lester. Until next time, take care and God bless.
If you enjoyed this video and would like to see more of them in the future, please consider making a donation to the Missouri Torch here. And please subscribe to our new YouTube channel and visit us at themissouritorch.com.